sequence diagrams anymore for you. I was disappointed to read that because they were kind of fun diagrams. What I'm going to do in Visual Studio is I'm going to design a very simple application, and then I'll show you how the sequence classes talk to each other. So I'm just going to make a new project. Zoom this. I hate Zoom, but that's 250. I don't want 250. Does it only go to 250? Can I change that percentage? No. That's a little better, I think. All right, so new project. It's just going to be a console app. Link here to console. And I'm going to call it, what do I want to call it? GPA calculator. Really simple. But it'll show you a little bit about relations between classes, and then we can do on it. I just don't want to spend hours coding something, and that is fairly quick, I think. So, you guys with me, or do you care? Sure. Or you need it to 250? Slightly bigger. Slightly bigger. Is that better? Oh, calculator. Okay. That would work, but so just C# console application, everything default. I changed it back to calculator instead of calculator. Although calculator is more interesting, but it's going to do okay. You can name it whatever you want. All right. Are we ready? Do you need? Let's go back down one more. There we go. So add a couple of classes real quick. As I said, they're going to be fairly quick. I don't want to. The point is the sequence diagrams more than the classes. I'm going to add, and I'm going to add a class. And this class, it'll be C#, and I'm going to call it, go up a little for this dialog box. There we go. I'm going to call it grade. Okay, so I'm going to add. Are you guys with me? So we have a grade class. What do you need to know about for a grade if you're going to do GPA? Anybody remember?
Range.
The what?
Range between A and B.
Well, I'm taking numeric grades like we have here. So
you can find a mean, an average.
But not in this. We'll do that in the calculation.
Okay.
So I'm going to call it, let's call it course, string course. Well, and actually, let's let's do the shortcut. Public string, I'm going to make that a capital. So that'll be the course. This is actually we don't need, but we do need public double, I'm going to call it grade point. And do a get and set. And the other thing you have to do, this could be int or it could be double. Let's do int. So if you're going to calculate a GPA, you need, you don't need the course name, although you can do that, but grade point and credits you have to have. It's a weighted average. Have you ever calculated the GPA? You know, you have to multiply credits times grade. Right. So this is just a storage class to store the information you need for a particular grade. Questions on that? The get and set, have I done that in this class? It's a shortcut for getters and setters. You can only do it in C#. In Java, you'd have to write a getter and a setter. All right. Here, I'm going to add another class. And this class will be the one that does the calculations. So I'm going to add a class. I think I'll call this one GPA because it's the average. It'll give us the average. As I said, I don't want to spend forever coding. I just want to get something so you can see how the relationship between the diagram and the classes. All right, so one of the things that we need is, and this one I'm going to make it private, a private list grade. Okay. That makes sense? We're going to have a list of the grades because that's what we basically, you know, if you want to do an average, you have to have more than one grade. I will initialize that. I guess I'll initialize it in our constructor. We haven't talked a lot about constructors and stuff, but does it make sense? Do you guys know what they are well enough? Yeah, the constructor basically constructs the classes. It initializes it. So one of the things I'm doing in it is I'm initializing the list. You don't have to do it there. You could have initialized it up here, but that's what constructors are for. So I'm going to keep this fairly simple. Let me go down at least one level. Okay. Somebody adjusted the thing, so I actually have more room here. So there's a few methods I'm going to do. Do you guys have any ideas of what would be some? So I'm going to do a public add grade. So I'm just going to do grades add G. That's all you have to do to add a grade. I'm not going to put things in here. Oh, you need to give it a type, void. I'm not going to put methods in here to edit them or delete them. You could have those, but. So, and then I'm going to do, I'm making this up as I go, so it could be adjusted. Private get don't want to do the whole calculation in one method. I could break it up. Parts of it, you have to get the weights, the weight, and then you have to get the average. I guess that's all you have to do is get the total weight and then get the average. You guys look so enthused. Let's do it as one. So if I'm doing that, it's going to be public. Better form would be to break it up into its parts, probably, but do double weight equals 0. Double grade so we're going to loop through each of these. And I'm basically just going to weight plus equals dot credits times G dot grade point. So that'll give us the weight, and it accumulates as it goes through. And then for the total credits, plus equal G dot credits. It'll just add up all the credits. Does that make sense? You guys know the plus equal? It just keeps adding into itself. And then we'll just do the GPA. So actually we could do return weight divided by credits, or total credits. So that should give us our GPA. Unless I got something wrong, but I think that's right. So that's our calculator. Again, you could add all sorts of methods, but I'm just going to, again, we'll do a diagram showing a little bit. I'm going to do one last class, and then we'll test it, and then we'll sure. After we test it, we'll do the diagram. This also we can use if you make it. I'll put it up in GitHub or somewhere because we can use it to, when we do the unit testing, I can use it as an example. We can do unit testing up with it. Are we ready? Okay. So I'm going to add one more class. So I'm going to do, we'll call it a display. It's not going to be a form. It's just going to be console write lines and things. So let's do a method, actually. So we need so I'm going to just say a console write line.
Got mine twice.
Yes, I do. Maybe I want to write 2 lines. I don't know. I'm just going to do how many grades do you want to enter? I'm not going to make this sophisticated. You guys remember this from 110? Some of you didn't have. I actually like the way that it gets done here in C# better than the Java method of this, which is a little bit more cumbersome, where you have to get a scanner. Yeah. You don't actually have to do a scanner. You can actually do it with a direct input. There's kind of an equivalent to print line, but the scanner gives you more, just makes it smoother.
Read line? Would it be called read line by any chance?
It might be called read line, something like that. It's been a while since I did that. I usually use the scanner. So I'm going to do a for int I equals 0. I is less than number. I plus plus. And we're just going to enter the grades. So I'm going to do grade equals new grade. I'm going to, it's the course name in there, but I don't really care. So I'm just going to do enter the grade point, not enter. Enter the grade point. So double GP, actually we don't even need to do that. G dot grade point equals double dot parse console read line. Okay, and then I'm going to do console dot write line. Enter the credits. G dot credits equals int dot parse console read line. Okay, so we'll just enter as many credits as we want. I'm leaving out the course. You could enter that if you wanted to. And then I'm going to, first I'm going to actually create the other method. This is where your curly braces could get you in trouble. I'm just doing that so you, and then in between here I'm going to so your GPA is actually, so before I can do that, a couple of things I need to do, I forgot. Up here, I'm going to declare GPA calculator equals new GPA calculator. What does it not like about that? Oh, what was the name of our class? GPA, it's just GPA. And I did it as GPA, so equals GPA dot calculate GPA. One other thing I need to do here when I did the credits, I didn't do anything with them. So I need to do GPA dot add grade. So that's the whole thing. I'll try to put it, I think that's mostly, other than the top of the code, that's pretty much all of it. And I might call get GPA right here. Just so it's called another last thing I'll do, but I'll give you a minute. And then we'll make the sequence diagram. We'll run it, test it, and then we'll make the sequence diagram. Does this make sense? It's really simple class. I've used this a lot. It's like the first or second assignment in Java and other things. No questions? You guys ready for the last? The one thing I'm going to add here is I'm going to add a constructor. So, and this should be public class display. Did the other one say public or not? GPA? Must have. Let's make it public. Sometimes it doesn't work if it's not public. So let's go back to display. I'm going to make a public display. And I'm going to call get grades. What that'll do is that when I call it from the main, all I have to do is say display equals new display. It'll call the constructor, it'll call get grades, and everything will run. Which is the last thing I'm going to do. Right here, I'm just going to say I'm also going to put console read key because I think it'll go away too fast otherwise. So are we ready to test? Give me a second. I will post this too.
On the lock or
I could do it. I could put it in GitHub. So I'm going to start this, and this is just to test it before. There are build errors. Where is the build error?
It's on GPA.
Same error on the upgrade.
Public class GPA. Oh, you know what? So add grade, calculate GPA. What is it not like? Do I have add grade more than once?
Is it because you, I just changed mine, but I have mine in the list and the add grade all lowercase. Whether all uppercase here and then.
No, that shouldn't matter. That's just naming conventions. It's saying that grade is less accessible. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I changed everything to public except grade, right? So it should work now. I'm going to zoom this up again just for this. So let's enter 3 grades. So I want to enter the grade point. Let's say 3.5, and the credits is 5. Let's say that we got a 1.2 because we were really uninterested, but there was only 3 credits. And then let's do a 2.8. Actually, if you're testing, you should do things where you can do the math fairly easily, which I'm not doing. 4 credits, and my GPA is 2.6, which is probably about right.
I only got 3.5.
Yeah. So the point of the weighted credits is just that a 3 credit class shouldn't count as much as a 5 credit class, right? So that's why you multiply to get the weight and everything. But so the program seems to work, right? We could go through and test it with numbers where we could add them in our head or easily and make sure, but generally it seems to work. So let's do the diagram for this. Right? This is the part you've been waiting for with bated breath, I'm sure. So I'm going to get Visio. I'm going to leave Visual Studio up, but I'm going to get Visio. And what we want, let's down the zoom a bit. So it may not be in the list here.
it's under software.
It is under software. I was just seeing if it was out open. So if you go to software, and what you want is a UML sequence diagram. And we'll do the empty one. I've noticed if you do these, they give you the whole template, which generally I don't want. All right, so here's the sequence diagram, and you have your different tools over here, which I could zoom up for those, but I want to zoom down for the actual diagram. So you have right, your object lifeline, your activation. If you want to do a loop, alternative, other, there's all sorts of different things. There's a message and the return message. message to the self and an asynchronous message, which we're not going to worry about synchronous, whether synchronous or asynchronous. These are all synchronous anyway. So if you think about the objects, I'm just going to pull an object here. And I'm going to zoom down one. What would be like the first object? Display, yeah, we called. So objects are classes, right? So they're the classes that we have. So we have display. I'm going to just do the other. So the other one is grade, right? And then we also have calculate, yeah, GPA. So those are our basic classes that we have in here. So the point of this diagram is how do they talk to each other? So the first thing that's display does is it actually creates GPA, right? You don't have to do these, but I'm gonna do this a little down below. So I'm gonna take a message from here. And if you want, you can do an activation timeline. They're actually kind of good just to let you know when things are going. So I'm going to go over here, because at the very top of the class, so I'm going to kind of do this, and I'm going to say create GPA, right? So that's the very first thing it does when we made it new at the top. Now the next thing it does is it creates, there's actually another object in here. I'm not sure if we want to add it, but we could. The list, I'm going to just call it list. Okay, so the next thing it really does is it creates the list. Let's move that down a little.
Top and on left one.
Say again.
That's the idea of the flow.
So this,
left to right.
yeah, this is the coming down. This is the timeline coming down. This is, it calls this. It's going to create the list, and then it's going to loop and create the grade, right? So I don't know. I'm just trying to think about how.
So time passing is going down.
Time passing is going down. So once it creates the list, I'm going to make that a little, the list stays alive though. And I'm going to have it, and this can come down. All right, this will be down quite a ways. I'm going to come over and create it creates the grade. You guys can help me if I'm totally screwing these up. So it creates the grade. And it actually does that. I'm going to.
Is it skipping over list grades there? Is that why it's?
Yeah.
So it doesn't show like a curve when it's skipping over something.
No, it doesn't. I mean, you could probably, there's probably a way to do that, but. So it's going to loop, right, while it does it creates the grade. So one of the things it does is it creates the grade and then it adds I guess I'll just do it, add to list. Is that right? The list actually creates the grade. The list is created over here. Does that make sense? I wonder if I'm putting it in the wrong place. Because when we create the GPA, I want to do the whole, see if I can select everything. I think it's actually over here. And then like here, it would go through, and we can make this smaller. That makes sense? That makes more sense to me. This would be active all the way through this. Okay, then it calls for, actually outside of the loop. Come on, stretch for me. All right. So at this point, what it does is it goes over get GPA. Can't go forward in time though. There we go. And then the return message, this is actually the first really return message. It returns the GPA. Does that make sense? Let's take a look at this. I'm going to try, actually, so this often doesn't work very well. Makes it too, well, that's actually not too bad, except it's not all on one, yeah, it is all on one screen. So these are our objects, right? We have a display, we have our grade, we have our GPA, and technically the list is an object too. So the very first thing when we call the display is it creates the GPA because we put it right at the top, right? GPA equals new GPA. All right, the next thing it does in a loop is that it creates the grade and it adds, when each grade is created, it adds it to the list. The list was created as soon as this was initialized because that was in the constructor, right? So the grade is, the list is made right there. So we keep adding it to the list, and we keep doing that for as many lists, grades as there are. That's what this box with the loop is. When the loop is done, we request of the GPA class to get the GPA, and it returns the value to the display. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, let me know.
Displays the console class, right?
Yeah, they're all. So display, I wrote the class display.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and then we called it from the main. This actually tells you a lot if you do these, and they can take some thought. But they tell you a lot about how your objects interact. And they can be at a fairly abstract high level where you're just, in general, or they can be very specific, like where you actually have the methods, signatures, and what parameters are being passed. But one of the problems with object-oriented programming that a lot of people have is trying to get it in their head how the classes are actually interacting with each other, how they're talking to each other. And that's what this diagram is about, is how the classes talk to each other. So what questions do you have about this one? I did the classes first so that hopefully it'll be more concrete when I did the diagram. Right, so these classes map directly, these objects map directly to the classes that I wrote, right? These methods, I didn't have it, I didn't do it, you know, the create GPA is actually just, and I could if I wanted to just new GPA, right? Make it new, it's just when we say that GPA equals new GPA, that's what creates the GPA. When we create the grade, that's grade equals new grade inside the loop, right? So, and then it creates the grade, it adds the grade to the list, goes back, creates a new grade, adds it to the list, goes back, creates it, and does it for as many times as you say. When it's done, you request the get GPA method, and it returns it to the display to show it. Yeah.
So the grade, I mean, you could also call it calculate grade or something like that. Is that because that's what it's doing, right?
Yeah, although the grade, if we go back to Visual Studio, was just a class called grade.
Yeah.
But and it's not doing any calculating, right?
Oh, okay. My bigger question is, I guess, how could you have the list grade is higher on the timeline than the grade itself?
Because the list was created as soon as we initialized GPA.
Okay.
So this is the grade class, right? It's just a packet. I ignored the course, but it's just a packet of information. That's really all the grade class is. In the GPA class, notice in the constructor we did a new list grade, so that's when the list is created before it receives any grades.
So it reflects the program.
Yeah, it's meant to reflect the timing of the actual program. And the reason why, I mean, the list would have to be created before it could add grades to it. Yeah, so. And then there is an actual display class, which is called from programmer. So if we wanted to start from program, we could. And the first thing it would do is create display. And when you create, and if you want it, we could go out that far. When you create display, the first thing it does is initialize the GPA. So I started with display, but we could have started with program. Does that make sense to you? So as I said, these take some thinking about, and it's actually a little harder if you don't have concrete classes already made. If you're just thinking about vaguely what your objects would be. Yeah.
In another scenario, would it be best practice to do diagram first, or do we?
So I think that the function of these, at least, it might have several, more than one iteration of these. So one of the iterations would be where you're trying to think through how your classes would talk to each other. In that case, it would be better to do it ahead of time. The second iteration might be documentation. How do your classes actually talk to each other?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of these diagrams are used professionally when you're coding to document what you've done, as well as to, so that when other people come to your program and like they need to modify something, they can get going through these diagrams, they should be able to get a sense of what's going on. And again, if you just give them classes, which typically you do, you give them a whole bunch of classes, they could probably figure out how they talk to each other, but this might make it a lot faster to figure that out. I wouldn't try to make these super complicated. Even if you had like 50 classes, I wouldn't try to put them all in one. I would probably try to document like one action in each diagram rather than the whole program. Someday you may write classes that programs that have 50 classes. You never know. Android ones have a lot of classes, and actually Java too, because if you count all of the listener classes and things, they can add up quite a bit fairly quickly. So I will post this diagram. I'll post the code too. The diagram I'll probably put on, actually, do you want it as a diagram? Do you want it in, probably that would be easier just to upload the files in Canvas. I might be able to upload it with the GitHub. I've never tried putting a VSDX file up there.
Yeah.
Does anybody
Save that thing as a page or something?
Yeah, but then you can't work with it, right? If you want it as an active diagram, it has to be a VSXVS, or there are a few other formats I could save it. I'll try to save it as that into the GitHub also. It is just an example, but if you wanted to play with it. I mean, as a picture, it's easy. You could just save it. It actually has a save as PNG or JPEG. Yeah, or you could use the snip tool.
I love that stuff.
I use it a lot, actually, yes. For right now, I'm going to save it as a diagram. So I'll let you guys work. And as I said, I'm not going to have you do the presentation for the sequence diagrams, but I do want you to do them. And then we'll do the testing possibly as early as Thursday.
Take a look at some of this. They probably have all the rights to use the snipping tool to cut out the water. So